polling in the crucial battleground state of Wisconsin shows Harris and Trump in a tight contest just 53 days out from the election. New York Times polling has Vice President Kamala Harris with 50% of the vote and former President Trump with 47%. 4 years ago, President Biden beat Trump with about 49.5% of the vote compared to Trump's 48.8%. But 4 years before that, in 2016, Trump eked out an unexpected win in Wisconsin against Hillary Clinton.
Both candidates have made Wisconsin a key part of campaign strategy, making several trips there on the trail. Republicans held their nomination convention in Milwaukee in July, while Harris held her first rally there after officially becoming the nominee. Joining us now to discuss is Milwaukee Journal Sentinel reporter Jessie Opoien.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So help us understand the impact of all of the action in Milwaukee right now.
You know, the attention is obviously appreciated. I think, if you look back to 2016 and the state has not forgotten that Hillary Clinton did not come back to campaign here during the general election. She was here during the primary and that was it. And both, Donald Trump and Joe Biden certainly have made the state a focus. And at this point, I think you can look at nothing other than during the DNC, which was being held in Chicago, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz held a rally in Milwaukee. I think, that just underscores the focus on the state. And, JD Vance has joked about the fact that he basically lives in Wisconsin now. And it feels like it's true. We are seeing JD Vance and Tim Walz here crisscrossing the state pretty much every week at this point.
Right, and the RNC, of course, was held in Milwaukee by the Republicans. I'm wondering if you could give us a sense of what the top issues are for voters. Are they mostly consistent with what the national top issues are, like economy, immigration, crime, foreign policy?
They really are. Manufacturing and agriculture are big industries here in Wisconsin. So immigration ties into that in some interesting ways. I think, people are concerned about the border. They're concerned about the drug crisis, but they're also concerned about, how immigration policy impacts the farms that our state relies on. At the same time, crime is an issue. The economy is an issue. Abortion's an issue. And when we look at independent voters in the state, the top issues are the economy, and it's also Medicare and Social Security. So healthcare is big too. And among Democrats, it's still abortion really is one of the driving issues.
So I'm asking this as someone over in Iowa, being in a farm state, being in the Midwest, tariffs are something that really perks our ears up. After the tariffs were hiked in 2018, we saw soybean exports 63% lower than in the previous period in 2017. If we look at January through October, we saw that Chinese buyers started just getting their soybeans from Brazil. This is a huge crop that the United States exports. Since then, U.S. soybean prices have declined about 20%. There's no sign of return. What are farmers, what are people in the agricultural industry saying in Wisconsin about these proposed tariffs? 10% overall, combined 60% on China.
Yeah, I think, tariffs are always up for debate, but honestly, one of the bigger issues for farmers here in Wisconsin is dairy farming is such an integral part of our state. And we've just seen that become a less profitable industry over time. And our farmers here are looking for ways to keep those family farms running, whether that's looking at renewable energy sources, whether that's just looking at milk prices and looking at just frankly mental health. It has been, the economic impact is unquestionable, but the industries here honestly are looking for help at just the really basic level of physical and mental health.
How much stock are you putting into the polls, and how are you interpreting some of the results that are coming out? Because what we saw in 2016 and 2020 is that Democratic support was mostly overestimated. For example, in 2020, 538 had Biden up about 7 points in Wisconsin at this point in the race. He ended up winning by about 1 point. We see Kamala Harris up 2 to 3 in the 538 in Real Clear Politics averages. Does that mean, or should we anticipate that to mean that this is effectively tied right now?
I think we should. Yep. I think everyone's been very cautious after 2016, after looking at the polling here. And, Wisconsin, like you said, it's one of the states that really kind of had things off the mark. Our gold standard poll here is the Marquette University Law School poll. they have changed a lot of their methodology to try to adjust for the shifts that, need to be accounted for and how people respond to polls over the last few years. But yeah, when we look at the most recent measures, whether it's the Senate race, whether it's the presidential race, it's about 4 points, and the margin of error is more than 4 points. And I think that's about as much as we can count on at this point. I think we should expect it to be a very close race, a very, and again, 2016, 2020, both about 20,000, 22,000 vote margins. So you can't take anything for granted here.
So the economy is a top issue for voters. I want to make sure to ask about manufacturing when we're talking about Wisconsin. We've seen plants and factories close across the state. What do you think voters are looking for when they hear candidates talk about this and then they go to their homes, on the coast in fancy houses? What are they looking for in terms of ensuring manufacturing comes back to the U.S. and stays and there's good jobs?
I mean, it's exactly that. It's that focus on made in America, buy in America. And frankly, that's been a bipartisan issue. So you've got Tammy Baldwin running as a Democratic U.S. Senator for a third term, and you had Donald Trump running on that in years past. And I think, both of the presidential campaigns have started to place more of an emphasis on it. But that's what they're looking for. They're looking for policies to place an emphasis on buying goods that are manufactured here, to manufacture things in Wisconsin, to build ships, to build farm equipment, to make paper, all of the things that have kept these states running over the years. That it may have been cheaper over time to have trade agreements that Senate oversees, but I think there's just a real priority now. And I think it crosses party lines on just prioritizing that Made in America policy.
As we're watching the maps on election night in Wisconsin, what are some of the bellwether counties or districts that we should really be looking at to help us get a sense of which way this is trending?
So in years past, we would talk about the WOW counties, which are the suburbs around Milwaukee County. And now we talk about the BOW counties, which are kind of the suburbs in northeastern Wisconsin. And those are sort of two like tri-county areas that can flip either way. The area outside, so Milwaukee and Madison, Dane County, Milwaukee County are pretty much going to be reliably Democratic. Then you've got these suburban counties that over the years have started to shift a little bit more blue than they used to be. But what we're seeing as we're watching these candidates come through, they're focusing a lot on areas like La Crosse, Eau Claire, Wausau, so central Wisconsin and western Wisconsin. And those are the more rural parts of the state. But they also have, some young professionals. They have, small colleges there. And I think those are going to be the areas of the state that we really look at to see what turns the tide here.
One of the biggest controversies in recent elections in Wisconsin was the difference in polling locations open in Madison versus Milwaukee. Are you seeing any indication of a change there?
Well, that was really mostly an issue during the COVID pandemic when everyone kind of had to readjust. And I think everyone agrees that there were not enough polling locations open in Milwaukee during the pandemic. And Madison had that managed a whole lot better. We've seen a lot of shifts in that time. One of the bigger issues, I think, for us, and what we'll probably hear about on election night and in the days following, is the ability to count absentee ballots before election day. We don't have that ability in this state. There have been efforts to pass state laws to make that happen, and they haven't. And so that's where you end up getting these reports, of the so-called ballot dumps late at night, particularly in Milwaukee, which is known as a central count voting processing area. So, you're still going to see, I think, some issues, and you're going to hear from people who have frustrations. But I think there's been a lot of work done by local polling officials, by election officials since the pandemic to make sure that there's as much access as possible.
All right, Jessie, thank you so much. I hope we get to have you back before the election. Very helpful for us as we head into November. Thank you.